Hey everybody, I'm Mishan Funk. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm joined by a really awesome guest. He is a graphic designer for Marvel Comics. Nicholas Russell, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Is this your first interview?
Yes, it is.
Oh, wow. Cool. Well, I'm very
Professionally, at
honored.
least, like, yeah, I haven't anything related to what I do, with my work and stuff. So.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Well, I'm very honored. And again, I'm very appreciative that you're taking your time to speak with me today. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want to just kind of give a quick overview about what you do for Marvel, how long you've been with them, and how you ended up working at Marvel?
Yeah, probably easiest to start from the beginning. So I was looking for work, and I had heard that there's like this temporary position to. This was back when we had first acquired Star Wars comics. So we basically had to, transfer files from one company to another and like adjust like, to Marvel specs, basically. So I got that job, and then once that ran out, I transferred into my current position, which is kind of like the weekly production of comics and like various components of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how long have you been doing that for?
A little over 6 years in total, I think.
Oh, okay. So for a good amount of time. That's
it's been a little bit of time, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And I'm assuming you enjoy it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a very interesting like work environment and what you're doing. Not very many people get to experience like the ins and outs and seeing so much artwork like coming through various styles for various purposes. Like it's a nice position. Yes.
So just to give everyone some background on how I know you, I interviewed an artist by the name of Eric Gist, and who did the this Conan cover, and he'd spoken highly about you, and that you blew him away when you did the title treatment on this cover in particular. Yes. He couldn't stop talking about how great it was. And I was like, okay, I need to meet this guy.
He's actually the reason why I started using Twitter again, because he had mentioned me, and I was like, I was surprised that he would call me out, but actually mention me by name, and loved it so much.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this a little bit, and just your thought process, and just like kind of like all the limitations and like guidelines and restrictions, stuff like that you have to work with? Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this even isn't necessarily the full like print comic, because it's obviously doesn't have the UPC. So that is an aspect that we do have to keep in mind, because that takes up a good amount of real estate on the cover.
Right.
But for this one in particular, it's funny. I was split, because it seemed like I had a lot of space up top where I could just do the logo normally, flat, take up, a normal comic layout with, Marvel up in the top left, the logo to the right, and, UPC on the bottom. But in this case, I almost did it because I thought it might be a little too on the nose, but I almost felt like if I didn't, the editors might ask for it anyway. So I was like, I'll like, experiment and try it out. And it was kind of one of those things where, I kept on adding more and more, trying to blend in the logo to the art. So it wasn't, sticking out, but it also kind of added a little bit to the cover. So.
Yeah. How many versions do you go through before you finally, get to the final? And like, how much freedom are you given to play with the title? Because I'm assuming sometimes they tell you, we just want it at the top as big as possible, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk about like when you feel like you're able to get creative?
I mean, they are pretty lenient, I think, at this point. We're called the bullpen. It's 3 of us, and we handle all like the covers and the ancillary materials and stuff like that. And I think at this point, they all kind of have a good amount of trust in us to, set up a cover, what we consider like, the best way possible. There are times where, they aren't quite, on with what we're, providing, and they might tweak it a little bit, or they might want to change it completely. But for the most part, I think we know what they want, but at the same time, we still try to make sure we design the best layout possible for the coverage, so that the artwork gets the best treatment, and nothing's like covered up or like being distracted or anything like that.
Yeah. Like you still want the title to be easily read from afar, and things got to be
Exactly.
clear and stuff. How many versions did you go through before you landed on this one on the right?
I think I pretty much this was like the first version I went through, and I just kind of like really put everything into it. And um, you know, if I'm not 100% on something, I will give them maybe an extra version of something. But generally, I
Mm,
give them just like one version, and we can usually build off of that.
gotcha. Huh. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always curious about like, how many versions you present. Um, and like, do you usually present three ideas that you really like, or do you present like one idea that you really like and one that maybe, had feedback? And so I'm always very curious about that.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me, let's go to the next one here. So here are some of the covers you've worked on. Really awesome. And
Thank
it's
you.
kind of like, it shows a good variety of, you know, the amount of I guess graphics you have to put onto an artwork that you're given. Do you mind talking about each one and kind of just some of the challenges or some of the things that you wanted to try differently with each cover?
Yeah. So on the left, the Civil War too had its own like logo and trade dress lockup. So it was kind of trying to adapt that artwork to it, since that's a lot of real estate up at top, being
Yeah.
taken up right there. So you don't want it to take away from the artwork. But I think just all the different components, including the additional logo down at the bottom left, like trying to get everything to work together, that was a bit of a challenge. But I think the way it works out, I think everything gets the attention it deserves.
Mm.
And in the middle is actually a next page design, one of the ancillary
Okay.
materials. Yeah. Um, that the whole contagion one I had real like fun with, just like playing off that whole vibe. And uh, the like goopy purple effects, like I had grabbed from some of the artwork. I can't remember from where now off the top of my head, but I tried to incorporate different, like, whether it be some of the like interior pages or cover art into the ancillary materials to kind of,
Mm.
combine everything.
Yeah. And I think that's also something that I feel like a lot of people forget is like there is design that goes into comic books, like the cover and like all the the pages with the credits and the text and like
Yeah,
the
like
previously on and
recap
stuff. Like, yeah, like
letters,
someone
the
has
letters pages and stuff like that. Yeah.
exactly, like someone has to design that, but I feel
Yeah.
like that always gets like glossed over because people just go straight to the story, which is great, but like people forget like someone has to design all that stuff.
Well, back in,
um
like, the 90s, like a recap page was like a black background with white text, and like that was it. Now we like really actually put the effort into really, almost, you want to sell it as much as the cover should sell it, as the interior pages, so that the whole thing is just really grabbing people's attention.
right, and you want it to be consistent with the story or the look, right? Like
Exactly.
there's on the next slide we'll talk more about those pages, but yeah, I'm always curious about and I'm assuming once you are given the art, like are you able or are you allowed to, like you said, take whatever asset you want and use that as a graphic? And then like
Yeah.
these.
If anything, like if it's uh, we try to incorporate like a art credit somewhere in like the recap. Like we'll do like a title page or a recap design art by so and so. So we're not just trying to like take their artwork, but we're trying to also if it's a graphic element that we think that can really be a key feature in that design, then we try to work with that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm actually kind of jealous because you have access to all these awesome pieces of work and graphics, and you get to like play with them however you want. And it's just kind
I
of
do
like
feel kind of spoiled. Like I feel like I shouldn't be talking the way I should about some pieces of art, because I just at first it was just like overwhelming. Everything was amazing, and then after so many years, you're like, well, I really like this art style or this artist, and because we see so many, and some that are new to the business, some that have been here for ages, who are still providing some crazy pieces of art.
Yeah, yeah. And plus, like now you know what pieces of art work for what, right? Like you can already tell
Yeah.
like this piece is good for, the intro page or the recap page or whatever.
Yeah.
So like you can quickly tell like, oh, this one character doing this pose is really great for this. So that must be like now it's like, you just see that
Yes.
really fast.
Yeah,
Um,
that's usually, yeah, we do kind of have like a general way where we go through things and we visually look at certain things.
yeah. What about this Deadpool cover?
So this one, it was like, how much can we fit on a cover with it not, being too much? Like you don't want to kill the cover with too much text or things that kind of like takes away from the art. Um, so it was, a matter of, the logo is still very prominent in the right area, but the characters are still popping out. Still, using, some text at the bottom right to, provide a little bit more insight to it, but not, once again, not taken away from the art. And also the amount of credits on it. Like usually there's
Yeah.
3 or 4 normally, like that's our normal, but that's, quite a bit of people to fit on a cover, and you don't want it to be, you know, you don't want it to distract from anything else, basically.
Yeah, yeah. How much of this was graphic design? Like, it looks like the background has like a folded map texture.
Uh,
Is that something you added to it, or
no,
is that?
that was the artist.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, generally for us, like a lot of like, taking some pieces of art and masking them off so they can overlap, the logo
Yeah,
with
yeah.
some other features. And then, yeah, just like, obviously the logo lockup for, Marvel, including the issue number, stuff like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like most of our stuff is in like InDesign, but, we do the, overlaps with the logos in Photoshop.
Right, right, right. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting to me to hear like those kinds of decisions you have to make. Um, so here's a couple
Nice.
more. Um, can you talk about like when you're given like a piece of art for a cover and then you already know that you're going to have to do a lot of Photoshop work? Like, because I'm assuming with this Ghostwriter one,
Yeah.
like there's not
That
really, I mean, I guess you could have put the title at the bottom, you know, that would have been an option. But then, it's like, I guess with the Ghostwriter series, you have to keep the title up top. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to have to Photoshop or,
yeah.
cut out the character so he's in front of the title. Can you talk about some of the challenges of doing something like that?
Sure. So yeah, like especially for a number one, they definitely want to keep it like
Yeah,
a very
that's right.
standard like setup. They want, the Marvel box up in the top left. They want the logo in the top right. They want the UPC, in the bottom somewhere. So, for this, and without the logo there, I do think it would be too much empty space. Like, yes, you could focus on Ghostwriter, but it's still kind of a lot of empty space. Whereas the bottom, there's still a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so for this one, it was kind of you look at it and you're like, I'm going to spend a lot of time like masking off things, especially those chains. I,
Yeah.
just pull out the tablet and tediously go through every single chain link and
Link,
make
yeah.
sure because you could use like, the magic wand tool and stuff like that. But especially with these covers, the colors blend, you get some, rougher results that don't look as good.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's better to just do it right and get it, done properly.
Right, right.
Um, but even with the effects on like his head, you have flames, so you have to blend with
Oh,
like
yeah.
transparencies. You can't just cut it out, jagged edge with a flame. That's not how it rolls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and even the transparency on the Ghost Rider, I can't remember for sure, but I don't think that was initially how it was. I think it might have been just like a stark white just to make it really pop. But then we
Oh.
played with like a transparency, and I think that kind of, it felt a lot better.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, that was kind of how we, tackled this. And even like the UPC placement was tough because, you didn't want to take away from all the action happening in the bottom right either.
That's right. And plus,
So
do you have is it also challenging when the artist signature is in a place where it gets covered up? Like, are you always, is that a
depends.
concern or?
That is definitely a concern. If the UPC needs to be in a certain place and the artist signature is there, 9 times out of 10 we will move it.
Oh,
It's usually like you can like pull it off. Like there's not like a separate layer for the logo, so we just kind of have to pull it from the artwork. But generally, they're done in a way that it isn't too difficult to move it to another place and kind of like blend it in. So that is another thing that we do fairly often.
Yeah. Do you how often do you I guess when you were working with Eric, there was some back and forth about the process of where the title and the trade dress is going to be. Like, does that happen often with artists? Like, do you communicate with them, especially if it's like an issue number 1 where they haven't seen the logo design, they don't know how big it's going to be, stuff like that? Like, do you have to communicate with them to be aware, like when they're creating a cover, like be aware the top's going to be, leave it a little empty, or do they already know that? Just like, can you talk about that a little bit?
In an ideal world, they should know that already.
Right, yeah.
Usually, I do believe that editorial is good about providing the artist with like a general template for our covers. Like this is, it's kind of old, but I still do think they use it where it like has like a logo box and it'll say generally this is where it'll be, this is where the Marvel logo will be, and the UPC could be in these locations. So normally, the artist has that kind of thought process. But I mean, sometimes the artist could have that in mind, and just like when you're creating art, you just kind of get focused on, creating the piece, not really thinking about the cover. So sometimes I don't think we necessarily go back to the artist too much. I think it's more we as designers have to tackle that piece of art in the best way possible without, having too many elements be off, I guess.
Yeah. So it's more of like, that's your challenge, right? Is how do you still showcase the artwork, but also provide the title and then the text and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, in a way, so it's balanced, right?
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Cool. Can you talk about the Spider-Man one in the middle?
Yeah, this is another next page. The whole Spider-Man, based on the video game series, that was a really fun and rewarding challenge. That whole design, like I did the recap and letters page for that as well, and it was really just playing off of, because this was one of those logos that was provided to us by the gaming aspect of Marvel. So I was working off of what they had designed. So I based the whole design based on that logo, not necessarily what I wanted to do, but trying to keep that feeling going. And I pulled a lot of the colors, from, the game and, the pause menu. Like I got screenshots and I looked at what colors they used for, the different interfaces. So I tried to tie those things together.
Yeah. How is it? Is it normally? Do you normally put that kind of effort into each book? Like, are you? Do you do that kind of research normally? Is that just part of what you do? Is like, especially with this, like, okay, you went and looked up colors, you looked up style and brand design. Like, is that something you normally do? You try to do at least with each.
I would say it's situational. For this one, I think it was a little bit more because there's already that aspect of that design that was already established, and I didn't want to, like, you kind of want to like build off of what they have. You don't want to distinguish it because you want these things to merge together. You're not trying to be separate entities. Other times it's just, you kind of have an idea and you kind of build off of it. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. We also do sometimes have, editorial providing us with kind of like a base point to work off of. Like they kind of want, a certain feeling, or, the story's like this, so you can kind of give it this vibe with, the text or design. So it's kind of like you have to adapt to each thing.
Got it. What about this Punisher one? Is that usually with like the title design, or the logo design, I guess. Is that something that is normally provided, or is that usually something a graphic designer creates? Can you maybe just talk about that a little bit?
So I can't remember who designed this logo, but it was in-house. Like we generally do have, even that has merged into us providing logos as well. But back then there was like a certain team that would build logos for, the trades or the comics, and then, we pull from those assets. But it's always, we have a base vector usually to work from, and then it's building off of that, like what colors or gradients you use.
Yeah.
And, for this, I kind of wanted to have like the bottom of it kind of be splattered in blood, because there's, the whole cover is kind of tied to that, Punisher's skull and blood.
Oh, so it originally wasn't red at the bottom. It was just all white.
Yeah, it's usually like a base like black or white vector, and we pull from that, and we just do like a color overlay or gradient overlay, and then on top of that you do like a clipping mask, and then for the blood I used a textured brush of sorts, and I just kind of like added this like splattered blood effect. So you kind of each time you use the logo, so long as it's that kind of thing, you can try to tie it to the cover art.
Gotcha. That's clever. I really like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't think, I thought the title logo already had the blood splatter at the bottom, but I didn't realize that was something you added just to enhance the overall cover. So that's really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So this is, again, I think
Yes.
a part of like comic books that doesn't get enough like attention,
Yeah.
Because people, I mean, literally people just flip through this to get straight to the art and stuff. But like this stuff takes time, right? This is like design. Can you maybe talk a little bit about like the Marvel Comics one, the Deadpool one a little bit?
Sure. So yeah, the Marvel Comics one, a lot of text, obviously.
Yes.
I think that was like the biggest challenge is like, we're not just trying to credit all these people just to credit them. Like all these people deserve the credit they deserve. So it's, trying to find the way to, have the text big enough so people can be, reading this and have it be legible, but, having like the overall design work together. So I think that was it, is just trying to highlight the text and make sure that it was visible. So like you said, like people don't necessarily skip over it. Like they, quick, look at it and realize, look at all these people that worked on these comics, that's a significant amount of people. And so I think that was the focus on that, is trying to make sure that I could incorporate everything and make sure it kind of got the proper focus it got.
Yeah. Like I can tell you didn't really put too much, like there's like a subtle background graphic, but otherwise it's the text that's kind of like the focus. So
yeah.
And
then Deadpool, that, I kind of just, I'm trying to think now. I think it was just building off of like the Deadpool symbol with, his face. It really was just like using brushes of like blood splatter and I think some like metal textures as well to kind of just build up this like, very Deadpool aesthetic, like,
there was not enough
guns
text
and blood.
You're like, what do I do?
Yeah, and that's the thing, like a spread, that's something you have to think about. Like, the middle has like this, void, but at the same time, when you open up a comic, you have to think about that void, being, stapled together and not necessarily being blank space. It's just space you don't necessarily see because it's folded in.
Right. Yeah, I didn't really, you kind of forget about that. Yeah, there's like the binding you have to think about.
Yeah, we're always thinking about, bleeds and trims and, folds and all that stuff. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think like, can you, are any one of these ones where you had to spend like a lot of time? I guess the one with the text was the one that probably took a lot of time to really like lay out and make sure it was, still legible, but like not too overwhelming. Like what about the Agents of Atlas one at the bottom left? Like
I was gonna say, out of all these that I'm looking at, like it's a lot of text for the Marvel comics, but I think that was more of I don't think that was quite as challenging. I think the Agents of Atlas was probably the most challenging out of all these, just because of the map graphic and setting that whole aesthetic up, along with the headshots, because the headshots Those weren't originally all the headshots. So each time I got more headshots, I had to change the design so everything still flowed together.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So I'm assuming you constantly are getting updates to stuff. So like,
Yes.
how many? Trying to think, like, how many rounds of edits do you on average get, or you go through for each one of these like spreads? Like, are
I
you
mean,
editing this
usually
until
it's like,
the deadline?
I mean, yeah, sometimes it's like Friday and it's like, 6:30 and it's like, well, there's this one thing that still needs to be, changed before it goes to print or something like that. But generally, like, yeah, there's like 2 or 3 rounds, revisions. Usually they try to like provide us with the text, sometimes already proofread. So
Yeah.
we're pretty much, we know what text we're working with. We can set it up and lay it out and it's not going to change too much at least.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, like sometimes like you send it to them and it works really well and they're like, they're on board for it. Other times they're like, well, some things need to be adjusted. For that one, I think it was pretty much, I set it up and, it was pretty good as is. It was just, minor adjustments for credits and headshots and, trying to balance all that on, such a, even though you have a 2-page spread, it's still, a lot of stuff to fit in.
Yeah. Did you ever have a design that you were like really excited and proud about, and then when you submitted it, they were like, "Well, this isn't gonna work"? Has that happened, or for the most part, has it been like just minor
maybe,
tweaks?
maybe once or twice. Like, I think if anything, like what I sent in, they kind of built off of that. Like I can think of one or two.
Mm.
Um, I can't think of the titles off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but like I haven't had too many like that they've been drastic changes. Usually, what I provide, they can build off of, or like they, at least they can get an idea of what they want based off of that.
Right. Are you
So
do they normally give you some direction before you start, or is it more of like they're like, show me something and then they'll tell you what is that?
it's a back. You can get either one. Honestly, you get the whole range. Like sometimes they'll be like, you know, we, need this design. Here's like the text and credits, but the design is all up to you. Other times they're like, we have this vision in mind. Can you kind of build this for us?
Gotcha.
So it's the whole gambit. It's based on, who you're working with and what they like, at least because
Yeah.
some editors are very particular about like, the aesthetic that, the whole series is providing, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm always very curious to see like how much creative freedom you're given, if it's like you're working under, strict guidelines, which it sounds like it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's situational, but I think ultimately I do think they are trusting just because we've had a pretty core setup for a while now. So they know like who we are and how we work and what we can provide at least.
Gotcha. Very cool. And I guess these are just a couple more interior pages.
Yes.
And like, some of them are very like graphic heavy, right? Or like it really the layout is dependent on the art.
Yes.
Can you talk about a little bit about that? Just like if there's like a piece of art you really like and you want to use and you really try to like make it work, like especially with this Punisher one, because you have like the text going around the art. Can you talk a little bit about when you really want to show the art a little more?
I think for Punisher Kill Crew, I want to say that was pulled from probably the main cover. And yeah, I think it's one of those things where you see a figure like that and he's kind of like, it's such a strong presence. You want to work off of that. So I basically started that by just masking out his figure. And once I had that pulled out, it was more of trying to create, the aesthetic based around him. And that's where like I started building the Kirby crackle, which is all those little dots in the background behind him.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
overlaying, some, gradient brushes to create almost like a portal effect.
Yeah, it's cool. I didn't really. I mean, I noticed it, but I didn't really pick up on that that it was there. But it was like I knew there's like a light source there. I didn't realize what it was until you mentioned it.
Yeah, so I was trying to build that because I think it was kind of him like hopping around. So I kind of wanted to have like almost like, yeah, like he's traveling through this portal, almost like in a cave aesthetic.
Yeah.
So, and that stuff I had to think about too. Like I also like tried to blend that light onto his character, so it seemed like it fit with the piece. Because, if you look like on the left edge of the character, you can see like a greenish, gradient on it that I had to add. So it made it seem like he was actually in this scene. Because if not, it would kind of like stick out and look,
it would look flat.
odd.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like I basically built that aesthetic and fit the text around that. And since with recap text, you kind of want to have as much space to expand as possible, because each time you get you progress in the series, you add more text and it gets a little bit more complicated. So you have to you can't just have everything crunched together.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, especially if it's like the 20th issue in the story, you're like, okay, I need like a full page of recaps.
Yeah, exactly. People need to know what's going on.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't really think of that. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this Jessica Jones one I thought was really cool because you kind of did like the whole like the filing, like a post-it style.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about it? Yeah.
That was kind of based off the cover too. Like I was pulling off of like, even you could see like those stamps. You want to pull that like old paper worn feeling for it, and it's almost kind of like a mix between like either it's like a file or it's like a ransom note, like, and that kind of is the whole cover. It's like this very like dark, mysterious thing. So I think that was what played with it, and that's why also the text is like the I'm trying to think what it is, like a typewriter font, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Like trying to play off of that whole aesthetic.
Right.
But it was also trying to not cover up the face as much as possible, but providing enough space for all the credits.
Right.
Which is always the challenge.
Yeah. I guess that's always the struggle, right? Is how do you fit all the text on there without covering up the art?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then this one on the right for Ms. Marvel, was this just like an internal art page, or what was this for?
Yeah, they used this. They wanted the Ms. Marvel recap background updated, so they just focused me like on just updating the art, not necessarily like the credits or text. So I focused on like pulling a bunch of panels from different pages of art.
Oh, okay.
Not only like the color art, but the line art, so I could have the aesthetic of where her symbol is there. You have the color art. The other parts are the line art in the background that kind of give that, you still have the continuation of the art, but it's not as strong a presence. So the symbol really pops out.
Yeah. I didn't realize that each panel was from a different art style, different issue. So yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
If you want to look at my work, you can go to my website. It's nickrusselldesign.com. Has, a bunch of my stuff, if you want to, see what other stuff. I am going to try to, do more things on social media, but I'm trying to, plan a strategy for that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I look forward to seeing more of your work and, just more insight into how you do what you do. So, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And, I'd love to have you back again soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah.